Victors in the struggle for their rights, we won freedom's fight. Oh, one strong and free. Africa is our own motherland, fashioned with and blessed by God's good hands. Let us all our people join as one, brother under the sun. Oh, one strong and free. Our land and your nation is our pride. Dignity and peace lives on the sky, like a noble eagle in its flight. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one strong and free. Praise be to praise be, bless our great nation under free men we stand under the flag of our land. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one strong and free.
Honorable Vice President, before we sit, we'll ask the MCC Kabumbu to give us a word of prayer.
Shall we pray? Our Father, the Holy of Israel, we thank you this morning for bringing us together, PF leadership and also the leader of Zambia. Father, we ask for the Holy Spirit to lead this press briefing, and we ask you to forgive us if there's anything that we have done wrong through Lord and also for the Zambians. Father, we ask for your wisdom, and we pray for our leader, the Vice President, as he addresses the nation this morning, that you shall be the one to guide him to make our Zambia a better place to be. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much. You may be seated, Honorable Vice President. The Vice President of the Patriotic Front, Honorable Lubinda, has been franked by senior members of the party. We have Honorable Kebi Mbewe on my immediate right, who is the member of Central Committee for the Patriotic Front. We have a member of Central Committee who is a former DC, Madam Kabumbu. We also have the National Chairman for Information and Publicity, Honorable Raphael Nakachinda. We also have the former Minister for Transport and Communication, who is currently the Member of Parliament, Honorable Mutotwe Kafaya. Members of the press, you are welcome to this press conference. And like always, we want to thank you for always being there for the Patriotic Front. We don't take your support for granted. We really appreciate the work that you do, not only for the Patriotic Front, because everything that is communicated here is for the benefit and for the good of the people of Zambia. Without much ado, allow me to have the singular honor to request the Vice President of the Patriotic Front, Honorable Lubinda, to address the Zambian people through you members of the press. We would like to welcome Honorable Vice President to address the people of Zambia. Honorable Vice President, sir.
Thank you. My colleagues, as long as you remain masked, I will take off my mask. Sure. Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Honorable members of the Central Committee, members of the press, ordinary members of the party like me, invited guests, and ladies and gentlemen. We have called you today, the 4th of January, 2022, to discuss a number of pertinent issues affecting our country. However, before I proceed, let me, on behalf of the Central Committee of the Patriotic Front, wish all our members throughout the country and all our citizens a very prosperous and fruitful year ahead. We pray that 2022 brings better tidings to all of us than did 2021. We are alive to the fact that the year that we have commenced shall be filled with numerous economic, social, and political hardships due to the misdirected policy measures that the UPND government is pursuing. That notwithstanding, we urge all Zambians to remain steadfast in their resolve to make Zambia a much better country to live in. This is not time to be despondent. Rather, let us all look ahead with the zeal to point to all the wrongs that this government is committing and to provide alternative and more viable measures. Let us, in the Patriotic Front, colleagues, prepare for much better leadership, for a much better future. Members of the press, I have a number of issues that I'd like to address today. Namely, there's so much talked about CDF in relation to decentralization. Secondly, the release of funds for payment to farmers for their maize, the release of funds for schools, the release of bursaries through CDF, and the famous Southern African Business Development Forum Public-Private Partnership Project. Let me start with the release of funds for payment to farmers, because this is very urgent. Colleagues, the long-awaited and highly sung about New Dawn 2022 budget became operational on 1st of January 2022. You will recall that before 1st of January 2022, we were being treated to statements about how we should wait for the New Dawn government's budget to be operational. It became operational on the 1st of January. And yesterday, government announced the release of 960 million kwacha for farmers who supplied maize under the 2020-2021 farming season, which was supplied to the Food Reserve Agency. We are disappointed to note that this money is coming so late in the season that our poor farmers will not be able to utilize it to invest in the 2021-2022 farming season. Today, 4th of January, is 2 weeks after the closing date on which farmers can plant maize viably. And the farmers to date have not received their payments. What awaits Zambia in 2022 is shortage of maize. And this will be because largely of the recklessness of the UPND government that failed to pay the farmers on time. They have always compared themselves to the performance of the PF, and I want to report to you that the PF always ensured that the farmer had inputs before the onset of the farming season. What is worse is that this amount of 960 million kwacha falls greatly short of paying all the farmers who have waited so long for their money. Since we are now in the long-awaited and much publicized New Dawn budget, we in the Patriotic Front urge the government to release all the money to all the farmers immediately. There is no excuse whatsoever. They told us to wait for their 2022 budget. Can they release all the money that they owe the farmers so that the farmers can go about their farming activities, so that the farmers can support their livelihoods? Members of the press, we are aware that another category of self-employed people in Zambia are also equally suffering. Suppliers of goods and services to government have not been paid their dues since August 2021, thereby subjecting them to numerous financial hardships, such as payment of salaries, rentals, insurance, etc., etc. This is having a spiral effect on the households and indeed on the economy generally. Now that the new Dawn 2022 budget has kicked in, we implore the government to settle the local debt speedily so as to inject liquidity into the economy and to give relief to those suffering people who depend on suppliers of goods and services to government. We are aware that there were two reasons they advanced for not paying suppliers. One was that they are conducting an audit. Surely, government machinery must not take 4 months to audit suppliers of goods and services. If it's going to take them 4 months to only audit suppliers of goods and services, one wonders how long it will take them to audit all the various government ministries. We've also been aware of the fact that they have been failing to pay because they wanted to accumulate the money to come and release it in their budget, the 2022 budget. They have no further excuse. Now it is their budget. Let them release the money that they accumulated, the money that they were storing. Let them release it to suppliers of goods and services so they can also pay for their children, they can pay their rentals, they can pay their salaries. Members of the press, you were informed that 324 million has been released as the first quarter funding for public schools aimed at facilitating the implementation of the much talked about free education for all, from early childhood through primary and secondary education levels. While this may sound like an achievement, it unfortunately falls flat on its head when you analyze the amount and compare it with the number of intended recipients. Note that there are more than 8,000 primary schools in Zambia. There are more than 1,000 secondary schools. There are more than 25 special education schools, let alone the early education childhood centers. As you can imagine, the 324 million translates to less than 30,000 kwacha per school for the first quarter. This, my dear friends, further translates to less than 10,000 kwacha per month. 10 pin. 10 pin. Less than the salary of the teacher. 10 pin. That is the money that they have allocated for the first quarter per school. 10,000. One wonders how the schools are expected to operate with such a meager allocation. Now, I'd like you to compare this to the more than 100,000 kwacha that was being received per school on average through PTA fees. If you take an example of a school in the constituency that I love the most, in Kabwate, take a school such as Dibala Secondary School, Kamwala Secondary School, with 4,000 learners and each one of them paying only 200 kwacha a term, 200 kwacha a term. The school was running on a budget of 800,000 kwacha. 800,000 kwacha per term. That has now been replaced with 30,000.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
How will we achieve quality education for our children? For us, it is not surprising that the results at grade 7, grade 9 are with such flying colors. We're not surprised. That is a product of hard work, a product of a government that is focused. That is a result of good management. That is the reason why today we can boast that all our grade 7 learners, all our grade 9 learners passed with flying colors.
Correct.
We indeed should now start comparing. Time has come for us to compare results. We in the Patriotic Front would like to call upon the government to make better and further releases to schools immediately, so that we do not compromise the quality of education offered to our children in the pursuit of the lavish promise of free education. Let them replace the 200 kwacha per child per term. Then we shall say indeed they are taking over. If they pay less than 200 kwacha per child per term, then they are shortchanging our education system. Then they are compromising the quality of education. And I'm sure that parents out there would rather pay 200 kwacha per term and ensure that their child receives quality education than to be made to believe false promises. Blatant lies. In addition to this call upon the government, we also wish to call upon it to immediately release the much talked about community-based funds for school bursaries. They have promised the Zambian children that vulnerable children who can't afford bursaries will receive bursaries through CDF. Schools are to open on the 24th January, which is hardly 3 weeks away. And yet, our members of parliament who have been tasked the responsibility of identifying vulnerable children who to give bursaries through the CDF have not even been told when their CDF will be released. To avoid that our members of parliament are held accountable for the failure of government, we call upon Treasury to immediately release the CDF so that our members of parliament can start disbursing bursaries to the vulnerable children. We heard that this CDF is a way of giving money to the people. The year is started. Let the people plan and utilize their money. So release it in full. Don't release it in November. Release it now in January, so they can implement the projects in the year. As many of you will recall, the concept of CDF originally was a form of slush fund running parallel with the president's slush fund. It was a fund to assist the MPs to implement projects which would supplement other projects implemented by central government. Progressively, the amount allocated to CDF increased, prompting the involvement of local authorities purely for purposes of accountability. Decentralization, on the other hand, involves the transfer of government functions together with matching resources to the lower structures, mostly at district and sub-district levels. The decentralization program provided in the decentralization policy cascades from the National Development Coordinating Committee, the NDCC, through the Provincial Development Coordinating Committees, the PDCCs, to District Development Coordinating Committees, DDCCs. These structures are to be superintended over by the ministry responsible for national planning, whereas the CDF is to be supervised through the ministry responsible for local government. In view of the foregoing, the UPND government's move to convert the CDF into a vehicle through which decentralization is to be implemented would change the intentions of both the CDF and the decentralization policy. The management of the CDF is meant to be less bureaucratic, whereas the decentralization program involves a complex structure with expertise drawn from more than 25 government departments only at the DTCC level. Now you want to subject the CDF to the same level of bureaucracy, with more than 25 ministries getting involved in deciding how this money should be used, and you call it decentralization. You are simply making it impossible for the utilization of the CDF. The attempt to bring the CDF under a process similar to decentralization implementation plan flies straight in the teeth of the CDF Act, and it must be stopped. This is the reason why the implementing ministry is now engaging in a protracted debate with members of parliament on how to design guidelines. You come up with a plan and you don't have the guidelines on how to implement the plan. You say we're going to give 25.7 million for every constituency to use at CDF, but we don't know how we will use it. You have allocated it in the budget, but you have no plan on how to utilize it. This reminds me of Chimbwino plan.
Yes.
Chimbwino plan. You excite the Zambians and say we're going to give them 25 million kwacha each. So they can build schools, they can build clinics, they can give bursaries to children, they can have empowerment for women, empowerment for youth. The year has started and the MPs say, how shall we do it? And they say, Kaya. Now MPs come and sit and tell us how you can use the money. One even wonders, if they didn't even have a plan, they didn't even know how this money would be utilized, how did they even arrive at the figure 25.7? Just guesswork. You don't run a country on guesswork. To run a country, you plan ahead. You don't just make lofty promises just for the sake of show. You make promises based on implementation plan. First plan. After you have tested the plan, then you implement. I opened by saying, let us be steadfast. We are in a year where we shall face lots of social, economic, and political hardships. Let me add to that, we shall also suffer governance hardships. Muzachiona, Jonathan. Murajibona unomwaga. Unomwaga chipante yatariga yanjira. You tell people, here is money. Go and use the money. And the person asks you, how shall I use it? Guide me. And you say, oh, sorry, I haven't even thought about it. You now start planning how to use the money. Start thinking how you shall use the money and how you shall report. 25.7 million? Unyandile. Twayanda. Whatever the case, because that money was promised and because that money was talked about so much, I would like to appeal to all members of the Patriotic Front, wherever you are, take your vulnerable children to your members of parliament. Tell them we want bursaries.
Yes.
Tell them, go and take the children, women, PF women, form women's clubs now. Form youth clubs now. Go to the members of parliament. Don't wait for next month. Now. Go and say, Bali promised us. He told us you give us youth empowerment. Yendani Magic, my MP. Go. And go and tell them, here's our business proposal. Liberty, no, we are still planning. What are you planning? You were told already 25.7 million illegal. We were told our budget is starting 2022. Today is 4th of January 2022. I encourage all our people who have good, brilliant empowerment programs, approach your MPs. They have the money. And MPs, I also urge you to make sure that wherever you are, join us in calling for the Treasury to release that money quickly, so that you're not considered failures by our people. Let me move. Before I do, let me just remind all of us that our gallant members of parliament, who the Patriotic Front is very proud of, raised these challenges in their debates. They raised these issues as they were debating the budget. They asked these pertinent questions as they were debating. And yet answers were not provided. Today I wish to join them in calling for the separation of the idea of decentralization and the idea of the CDF. Let the two be run as they were planned. One must not subsume the other, because the two concepts are different. And the two concepts have different targets. Members of the press, let me move to another matter. And let me state from the outset that the attempt by Honorable Minister of Finance, Stumbeko Musokotwane, to explain the Southern African Business Development Forum public-private partnership project did not make any sense at all.
It was a disaster.
Please, members of the press, give him another opportunity. Go to him and say, can you explain again? Because what you said did not make sense at all. From the outset, it should be clarified that the allegation that this PPP was initiated by the PF government cannot be further from the truth. If you read the speech which was delivered by Her Honor the Vice President then, Mrs. Zinongewina, at the occasion of this subject matter, that speech will reveal that the project that she was discussing was a project to do with settlements, improvement of settlements, not roads. So please don't confuse things. Don't make it appear that the PF government are the ones who signed this agreement, because we did not. What we were discussing through Madam Inongewina was resettlement plan. Now, the questions that the government must clarify on this matter are as follows. Why is this project such a priority? Why? Why is this project such a priority by a government that said they will not borrow? Because, by the way, when you enter into a PPP, in essence, you are borrowing. And they are saying they're going to borrow 3.7 billion, and the private partner, an NGO, by the way, it's an NGO, and also if you Google, it is already deregistered. So it is an illegal entity. But they have entered into an agreement. They are doing feasibility studies with a
ghost.
With a ghost. A deregistered organization which has no track record in doing any development work. No track record of doing even a gravel road, nothing. They're the ones that are entering into this contract. The question is, why is this a priority? Secondly, what is the feasibility of this project? 3.7 billion to do 2,200 kilometers of road translates to $1.8 million per kilometer. Why? President Bali, why? You called the PF names for doing roads at between $750 to $1 million per kilometer. You called us names, you called us thieves. What should you be called for suggesting that we increase the cost from 1 million to 1.8 million per kilometer? What name should we call you?
Bandits.
You called us thieves for $1 million per kilometer. What name qualifies to be yours? We agree we are thieves. Yes, $1 million per kilometer. Yes, we are thieves. The formula. But tell us, what name should we use for you? That's question number 3 I have. Question number 4, what is the economics of this project? My dear friend, even if they are to put toll gates along those 2,200 kilometers of road, if they were to put toll gates, and let's assume that every truck that passes through the toll gate is paying 500 kwacha, for you to recover the 3.7 billion kwacha in 25 years, you will require, my friends, no less than 13,200 trucks to drive through that toll gate a day.
It's not possible.
13,200 trucks paying 500 kwacha each per day. That's when you make the $3.7 billion in 25 years. So by that time, what will remain? If there are 13,000 trucks going along the roads every day, after 25 years, what will be there? After 25 years, it will be a river.
Yes.
So then what are you planning? What are you doing this for? Please, President Bali, we know you are the most knowledgeable economist, but please educate us. Educate us, the unknowledgeable people in PF. We don't know. Tell us. What is the plan, Bali? How can you possibly say a private person comes and invests in your country 2,200 kilometers, and you know that by the time they even recover that money, the roads would have been damaged? And even those people, what are they looking for? Because in Zambia, in the whole country, we don't have more than 13,000 trucks riding every day. So now just in that region of the country, they will create so much traffic. Izambo tenga chani. Vantu wazambo kwela matraka yoni vandana. Olo kuti vana ina ngombe zambili, vaza kuisa ngombe zingati kuti tenge 13,200 trucks every day. Minister Musokotwane, please explain better. And I'd like to appeal to you, Minister Musokotwane, please, now you have crossed the Rubicon. In 2021, the Zambian people could tolerate you blaming PF. We are using the PF government budget. This budget, we just found it. At least people could listen. Now, please, please, you defeated us already. We accepted. We are history. Kwamana, Kwaumuna, we are quiet. Now, please, everything PF. Everything PF. This forum of yours, you want to bring in PF. We didn't talk about 2,200 kilometers of road with Madam Minonge. We didn't. So please, now, like your slogan says, forward, forward, forward. Not backward, forward. Zambians want to see you deliver it. Forward. Stop talking about the past. Forward. Otherwise you become UPND backwards. If you want to change your title, yes, change your title. If you keep referring to us, then you're UPND backward. But you are UPND forward. So please stop blaming PF. You have now crossed that line, the 31st of December 2021. Now it is a new year. Now show us what you promised. Blaming PF will not put money in the pockets of those pensioners. And by the way, I'll be amiss if I don't comment on the issue of pensioners. Please don't brag and say, we have started paying pensioners, as though the PF government was not paying pensioners. The issue of pensioners is a historic issue. Starting especially because of the relationship Zambia had with the newfound friends, IMF. When in the 1990s, the IMF said, privatize companies. What happened? People lost jobs. And those are the people that we are talking about today. These are not fresh pensioners. These are pensioners that the PF inherited. By the time we were forming government in 2011, there were more than 22,000 pensioners. As I speak to you, by August, when we were leaving government, we had declared more than 20,000 pensioners. More than 20,000. During the time that I was privileged to be Minister of Justice, 5 years, 2016 to 2021, through the Ministry of Justice, we paid more than 5.9 billion. Now they are boasting about 250 million. Why? And it's not as though they are paying all the pensioners, unfortunately. They are paying only some. Others are remaining on the list. Huh? When I was Minister of Justice, I called you members of the press to inform you that I was surprised that the list of pensioners was not reconciled over such a long period of time. President Bali, as you investigate, you also investigate some of those law firms. There are some law firms that we know who obtained pensioners' money and they mishandled it. Investigate them and bring them to the book. Don't just brag about 255 million. No. We did what we could. And I have to say, I left the Ministry of Justice a very sad man. We left government as sad people that our desire to clear all the pensioners could not materialize. It was our desire to make sure that no pensioner goes without being paid their pension. It was our desire. Unfortunately, we couldn't achieve it. But we're happy that we cleared more than 20,000 out of 22,000. Today, as we speak, there are some people who are retired. Some people were dismissed. And against the Constitution, they are not even being paid their monthly salaries, and yet they have not been paid their pension benefits. Rule of law. My foot. There is a Tonga phrase that I'm still trying to learn, which President Bali liked to use when he was in opposition. I'll learn it one day. But for now, I'll say my foot. The rule of law, under a government that dismisses DCs, they don't pay them their monthly salaries, and yet they have not paid them their pension. And that is totally unconstitutional. For us, we made sure that whoever was laid off was paid their monthly salary before they got their full terminal benefits. So President Bali will also ask you, please, all those people that whose jobs you have terminated, return them on their monthly salary until such a time that you're able to clear their terminal benefits. Because that is the provision of the law. Members of the press, I want to end by reassuring you that the Patriotic Front will live by the words that we pronounced in our first press briefing after we lost elections. And the statement that I made then was that we in the Patriotic Front are going to provide true checks and balances, objective checks and balances. We shall not be in any way antagonistic. We learned our bitter lessons when we were in government, when the leading opposition party was not giving us objective checks and balances. Rather, they were being antagonistic of us on every issue. For us, we'll provide objective checks and balances. And now that we have started the year 2022, our number one assignment is to make sure that the promises on which President Bali won elections are delivered. That is our number one objective. We want to assist them to deliver on all their promises. And please don't start twisting language. Don't, because we have all the recordings of your statements. You told us that you give us fuel at 12 kwacha. We want 12 kwacha fuel, not 20 kwacha fuel. 21 kwacha. We want 12 kwacha fuel. You told us that we're stealing 3 kwacha when the fuel price was 15 kwacha. We're stealing 3 kwacha. Now it's 21 kwacha. So who's stealing the 9 kwacha? Who's stealing the 9 kwacha extra? Yes, we were stealing the 3 kwacha. Tavomera, we were stealing the 3 kwacha. Okay, fine. But the price of fuel was 15 kwacha. Now it is 21 kwacha. Those Alpha 22. Isenga tutulai kuba 3 kwacha pa 15 kwacha. Mwakweze kamanje, ija 9 kwacha, ndana kuba. And don't twist words and start telling people as you come back on my radio, no, you have not increased the price of fuel, you have just reduced subsidy. In that is a subsidy, it was because we wanted to protect the Zambians. Imwachosa subsidy, and now you even send your ministers and go and start talking about what you shall use in Deni refinery for. You think you can use it for what? 3 ministers today are in Dollar to go and look at how to use it in Dollar refinery, in Deni refinery. To use it as what? Chigayo? Do you think they will come up and say, Manje, refinery is ambo bare medicine? It's meant to be a refinery for fuel. Also a refinery for Chibuku. No, for fuel. So why are we wasting time? Go and find out. What will they find out? It is a refinery to refine crude commingled oil. So whatever they do there, they will come up with the same answer. The plan is that bagoleka manjemanje. Bakachoka kuja mzavya tutagulisa. Baza kulisa no tender. Emisango yao. So baya bashitshi. But the PF, when we come back, we shall make sure that we have a refinery in Zambia to make sure that we reduce the cost of fuel. That is what was in our manifesto. We wanted to recapitalize in Deni so that we can refine oil in Zambia, so that we have bitumen produced here in Zambia. Not this idea of closing in Deni so that now you guys start carrying refined oil on trucks. Look at the state of the road. Nakonde Kapirimposhi Road. Look at the state of the road. It's already beaten up. Why? Because of all those heavy trucks. And now you're saying even the fuel that was coming through the pipeline must now come on the back of trucks. What will be the state of the road? Chimbi, no plan. Thank you very much for listening.
Honorable Acting President of the Patriotic Front, sir, you dwelled in a number of very critical issues. And our esteemed members of the press will make sure that the statement of the acting president of the party is given to all of you in a soft copy. the issues that the acting president has raised borders on the scandal of shortchanging the Zambian people. And you have a responsibility to make sure that issues that have been raised by the acting president here are heard far and wide by all Zambians to know what this government is doing in shortchanging their lives. We will request our members of the press, if you have any questions, to simply raise your hand, tell us who you are, the institution you represent, the acting president of the party, Honorable Lubinda, and members of the Central Committee seated here, and the Honorable Acting President. I want to inform you that we've been joined by yet another member of the Central Committee, Honorable Mundale. You're welcome, ma'am. We'll be able to respond to all the questions. It's time for the media to ask any questions on the issues that have been raised by the acting president of here. Yes, comrade. So, yes, comrade Wells.
Yes, my question is slightly away from what has been talked about, but it's just something that is of interest to the Patriotic Front members and the party as well. Just wanted to find out how preparation for the convention is going. And the second one is also the issue to do with Mr. Edgar Lungu as party president. And there's been that issue, which is everywhere where people are talking about, and that student lawyer is asking the president to resign from active politics. I don't know.
Is it PF, the student?
The student is Zambian. It's not
Oh,
PF.
I thought it was our name.
No, I think it's
I
not.
just wanted clarity.
Sure. So I just wanted to find out from the party how you're taking that and what stance you go with regard to President Lungu not resigning from active politics.
Thank you, Comrade Wells. He has raised two questions. Is there any other questions so that the Vice President, the acting president of PF, can combine those? If there are no any other questions, I'll request our acting president to answer to those two questions that have been raised by Comrade Wells.
Thank you, Wells. How are the preparations for the convention going? They're going very well. They're going extremely well. There are many things that ought to happen before we have the extraordinary convention. Many things. And we've already started on all the various fronts. And we're confident that soon the party will be ready to elect its next president at the next extraordinary conference. And I'd like to thank you for showing concern. I'm sure that many people are also eager to see that this formidable party goes to the conference to emerge even stronger. We're doing everything to make sure that we avoid the pitfalls of previous parties that broke up when they went to conferences. We want to hold together. Some of the events are open to the public, and the public can see them. Others, for political strategic reasons, shall be kept within the party. Others shall be shared with the party functionaries. Others shall be shared only amongst the Central Committee members. But as Vice President, speaking on behalf of my colleagues in the Central Committee, I can assure you that everything is progressing very well. The student lawyer who is suggesting why doesn't Edgar Chagwalungu resign, this is a matter that we have addressed on several occasions. And I was hoping that people would be remembering what we say. I hope that this might be one of the last times that I address this matter. President Edgar Lungu, soon after the announcement of results of 12th of August, I think 2 or 3 days after swearing in President Bali, put differently, 2 or 3 days after Edgar Chagwalungu handed over the instruments of governance to President Hakainde Hichilema, on his own volition, wrote a letter to Secretary to Cabinet. Unfortunately, I was copied in, and this is the reason I can speak about it with authority. I was copied in, and that letter to the Secretary to Cabinet was to announce to Cabinet Office and through Cabinet Office to the Executive that he, Edgar Chagwa Lungu, had now stepped from active politics. Effectively meaning, I have stopped, I have Nasia. And he said, in keeping with the provisions of the PF Constitution, I shall hold on to the title of President, not the functions. There's a distinction between function and title. What President Edgar Lungu holds today are not the functions of president. It is the title of president. And this is in keeping with the constitution of the PF, which says one president hands over to the successive president. However, the constitution also allows that the president can resign, can delegate, can hand over all functions to whoever he chooses in the Central Committee. I hope I'm making myself clear. The functions, the administrative functions that are bestowed on the president by the Constitution were all handed over to Acting Secretary General Nixon Chihambwa. All the political functions bestowed upon the presidency were handed over to the vice president. For us to hold this press briefing, we did not have to consult him, nor even to inform him. He's going to hear about this press briefing just like any ordinary member of the party. So President Edgar Lungu is not functioning as president of the PF. I'm exposing myself. If anything goes wrong in the PF, it is this fellow. If I don't discharge the functions of the office, it is not him, it is me. Until the next president is elected, the buck stops, unfortunately, here. So my dear friend, go and tell that student lawyer that we're very happy that even students are so keen on the developments of this political party because it is truly their party. I am not at all upset when people ask these questions. I'm actually overjoyed because it shows me the interest that citizens have in this party. I would have been very upset if you're not asking these questions because I would have said this party has no interest. People have no interest in this party. But the fact that we're getting these questions means that people are really following the developments in the party, and we welcome that interest. So please go and tell that young student that his party is in safe hands for the time being, and that President Edgar Lungu is out of the picture. Sometimes my colleagues like to also make me feel nice. You heard Comrade Antonio Mwanza referring to me as acting president. I'm actually vice president and just filling in the gaps for the office of the president. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Comrade, thank you for that question. Yes, Comrade.
My name is Adora Lubinda. I'm from Listen Talk Radio. Just out of curiosity, I would love to find out how far the party has gone in rebranding, and obviously what formula you're using to rebrand the party.
Yes, that is a question on rebranding acting president. Comrade, the mask, I can't recognize you there. Oh yes, it's senior veteran journalist.
Thank you, Director Solomon. Good morning, Mr. Vice President. My name is Jeff Pemwa. I publish the Zambia Informer, and I'm also a contributing editor to a number of foreign media, including Dow Jones. I wanted to draw you back to the issue of Indeni. Could you basically advise us on how you left the refiner at the time of leaving office? I'm asking this question because of late we've been following up the Indeni issue, and from the people close to the project, said it is still very viable. All IDC needed was to raise $250 million to buy what you'd call a refiner kind of operational equipment so that it could effectively get back to its capacity of 1.1 million tons, metric tons. Now that it has been put on care and maintenance, could you just kind of give us an appraisal whether it's moribund and it's palpable to be sold, or you have some information that Indeni is actually still viable? Thank you.
We take that as our last question, unless there is another question. We'll take it as our last question so that the acting president can respond to those two questions. Acting president, sir.
Thank you. The Adora, is it Adora?
Yes.
Yes. Madam, I'm sure that even from just the press briefings, you can see that we're rebranding. Just the press briefings themselves are different from what we used to do previously. You shall not hear us shouting, I'm sure that when you walked in, you saw our young people. And you tell that they are providing some security to all of you, not by them stamping the floor and running after you. Sometimes you might not even identify them. That in itself is rebranding. The tone of our members, when you hear members of the PF speak, even just from the tone, you can tell that there is a new breath in the party. So there are many things we're doing. It is not just rebranding by name, it is rebranding by deed. And every time that we meet, we are reminding ourselves that the purpose of rebranding is to make ourselves better. And rebranding starts by the change of the mindset. And you can see that. I invite you to come and observe our campaign in Kabwata. You will see that the format is totally different. You will not hear people going around and bragging. No. So we are truly rebranding. But also, the internal communication within the party is also getting better and better. These are all the things that we're doing to rebrand. We are not going to change our Chitenge as a way of rebranding. We will not change our name as a way of rebranding. We shall instead change our mindset. We're working on changing how we approach our members, how we approach issues, how we approach you members of it. Kapembwa, you are right. And you can write the story very well, actually. You seem to even have a lot of information. It is true that what Indeni needs is just recapitalization. There is what in technical terms is called a cracker. What is it called, cracker? What? Remember the name? There is a cracker that is required. I'm not even too sure it's a technical issue. I'm not an oil engineer, but it's a cracker that is required. And once you get the cracker and install it, then the efficiency with which you'll be refining commingled oil increases. If it increases, then it means that the cost becomes lower. And since you are keen on that matter, I'll ask Mr. Antonio Mwanza to give you a copy of our manifesto and read what we wrote about Indeni, because we discussed the issue of Indeni extensively in our manifesto. The truth of the matter, my dear brothers and sisters, is that Indeni is not salvage. Indeni can be made to function profitably. So whoever comes to us and tells us that this is just a piece of building or a piece of old equipment, they are not telling us the truth. Indeni can be revived. We'll wait and see what the report will be from those ministers who are going to visit Indeni. Thank you very much, members of the press.
Acting President of the Patriotic Front, members of the Central Committee, Honorable Dr. Kafaya, colleagues from the media, thank you so very much. We come to the end of this briefing. I will request that the Acting President and the Tuareg can go back upstairs. And members of the press, for those who need the soft copy, we always have Comrade Troy Mukuka to provide us with a soft copy of the statement of the Vice President. Comrade Kapembwa, I have a soft copy of our manifesto. I'll send it to you. And we'll do our usual housekeeping as always. Thank you so very much for always being there for us. We do appreciate it. Thank you.